First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, I appreciate you joining us here. We are live streaming from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We start every weekday right around 1 o'clock and go throughout the afternoon. We're at kptv.com. You can click on the Fox 12 Now tab, the live stream tab, the Fox 12 Oregon app, YouTube, lots of places. So whatever it is, wherever you are, thanks for finding us. We appreciate that. Feel free to share these episodes afterward. Today, we are talking about the Oregon Symphony and the upcoming season. We've got a preview for you. There's some pretty amazing things that are on the lineup for this year. We're going to talk all about that and what goes into actually scheduling out something like that. To do so, we are joined by Isaac Thompson, President and CEO. And thank you, very much for joining us here today. I always love doing these previews to find out, what's coming up for the season and what goes into it. But, maybe to start off, how did last season's go?
Well, great to talk to you again. Thanks so much for inviting me on. Last season was a huge success. Every performing arts organization throughout the country is kind of in a rebuilding period after the pandemic, but it's been just terrific to invite audiences back downtown. There's a real energy to the concert hall, to our performances. And, we ended the season just really strong, and it was great to kind of feel that community support for the orchestra.
I love that that's a tangible thing too that you're noticing, since the pandemic, and for any kind of event space, anybody having big public events like this, but to have that happen and having that downtown too. You mentioned that community, so you've really noticed that aspect last year.
Absolutely. It's certainly been a rebuilding process, but especially as we kind of move through the season and, near the end of the season, we were, experiencing some full houses, which was great. People excited to be back, people going to restaurants, bars around the concert. I think it's important to just note that, a symphony concert obviously is such a meaningful experience to experience that community with other citizens and experience that kind of beauty. But it's the full-on experience of coming downtown, of parking, of going and grabbing a drink with friends, of meeting other people in the community at the concert experience. So it's kind of a holistic journey, and the symphony is just excited to be part of that energy and welcoming people back downtown.
It really is like any event downtown, and definitely the symphony. I've got my places that I go to. That's where I'm going to go have some dinner, you can have a drink there, and then maybe afterward go get one. So adding into that, that community sense, but also just the economy too downtown, of incorporating everybody in. That's
absolutely
really beneficial. Well, looking at this year's lineup, one thing that I always wonder about anybody who's programming something like this with so many different shows, and we can go into each one of those, but what does it take to actually to do that, to schedule out so many different shows over so many different months involving the Oregon Symphony?
Well, it's a fascinating process, Greg. It's a little bit of sausage making and a puzzle. You've got obviously the schedule in the hall. You've got guest conductors and guest artists coming into town, scheduling those. So we plan about a year and a half or 2 years in advance, and we start kind of putting things in place. And it's a complicated process with a lot of different cooks in the kitchen. But what we hope for, and I think what the season demonstrates, is when you kind of come out of that, the intensity of the planning, you have something really impactful, beautiful, diverse that is exciting for the audience to experience. So we're just thrilled to be kicking off another season. The whole arc of the season really connects what is so wonderful about Oregon and living in Oregon, the beauty of our state, to music. And that's something that, we're increasingly exploring, is this intersection between, kind of the social imperative, or things that, as a citizen in Oregon, and maybe not a classical music aficionado, we can connect music to. So there's a point of entry for people to kind of experience how music can be part of their everyday life and experience living in this beautiful state.
And that's all such a really good point right there, because it is a very eclectic lineup that you have. But I think tying that into the nature side of things, to Oregon, maybe could you talk to us about a couple of those examples of something that is tying that all together for somebody going in to see this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're launching our season actually on September 21st through 23rd with a piece by Richard Strauss called the Alpine Symphony. This is a piece that isn't performed often because it is just massive. We actually have to build out a stage extension to fit all of the orchestra members on stage. And what this piece is is really a journey up an alpine trail, up a mountain. So we're leveraging this piece and collaborating with various organizations throughout town to kind of focus on Mount Hood and the preservation of that area, and different organizations that are interested in those kinds of activities. But it's just going to be a really impactful way to launch our season. And then, moving right into the rest of the classical season, we're bringing local artists, people that are of our community, that are creators. One that is really exciting is Andy Akiho. He's a Grammy nominated composer and percussionist, and we're doing the world premiere of a new cello concerto by Andy. Andy lives right down in the Pearl. He's an amazing steel pan virtuoso himself. We've done several of his works. So, we're kicking the season off with some real creative energy, and really, again, trying to find those points of connection so that audience goers can experience the music, but also experience some of their own lives through the concert going experience.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's certainly right there, talking about the Alpine experience, and then also Andy living right there in the Pearl. I was looking back here at the Alpine Symphony. I wanted to pull this up because you mentioned that it's a lot of musicians, a lot of people, over 100 musicians, wind and thunder machines. I mean, that sounds like a pretty incredible, just oral experience.
Yeah, it is like a sonic. I mean, it's hard to describe. It's one of those pieces that you really have to be in the concert hall to understand its full effect. I mean, not only do you have just a ton of musicians on stage, but also I think there are 8 horns that are off stage. There are moments where you feel like you are ascending a mountain, and you hear a thunderstorm rolling in, and you hear the alpine horns. It's a real journey of a musical experience, and it's one of the powerful and essential things about going to a symphonic concert is when you have over 100 musicians on stage performing at the highest level. That sonic aspect of it, that kind of wave of sound that goes over you, it's unforgettable, and it's something that I think is essential to experience.
Yeah, I mean, 100 of the best musicians you'll ever hear, all performing at the same time in concert like that. I mean, that's amazing. And looking at and I'm looking at the lineup right here, just because I was going through this earlier, because you've got those kinds of experiences. But I noticed that there's definitely a sci-fi theme to several of the shows. Close Encounters of the Third Kind being one of them, an amazing soundtrack. But then even something called The Sound of Space. Could you tell us what that one is?
Yeah, The Sound of Space is it's a concert that is part of our pop series. And, it kind of takes on a lot of different music from movies, different soundtracks from the Marvel films, things that are kind of extraterrestrial. It's a very diverse showcase of again, how music kind of fits into our lives in what we experience in the theater or in other places. And we showcase that with the power of the Oregon Symphony and, the talent that we have here in our community. But, I think it's one of the great aspects of our seasons. We have such a diversity of product, going from, the kind of tried and true classics to performing the scores of films. We have Close Encounters of a Third Kind. We have Love Actually during the holidays. And that's such a cool experience to actually see the film on the screen, but then hear a live orchestra underneath that performing the soundtrack. And it really kind of adds a different element to the way in which we go to movies. We kind of listen a little bit differently when you see an orchestra on stage, performing these great works. We also do amazing collaborations. This fall, we're welcoming on October 17th, Killer Mike, the rapper, who's going to be performing with the Oregon Symphony. So there's really something for everyone in the season. There are so many different points of entry, and I'm just thrilled that the community supports this orchestra, and I think it's just essential to the vibrancy of this place that we call home.
I mean, those matchups too that you mentioned. I mean, the Oregon Symphony has done some pretty amazing ones over the last few years. I mean, I believe Nos did one. I believe Cypress Hill, I think, was there last year, and then Killer Mike, which I love. I'm a big fan, so I definitely want to go check that one out. But how does that come about? Like, how does the Oregon Symphony pair up with Killer Mike from Run the Jewels to have a performance here in Portland?
Well, it's interesting. Oftentimes it emanates from those artists individually who, they're taken by a symphony orchestra. They enjoy that medium, and they want to find, kind of points of connection with their music and with what a symphony can provide. I mean, again, when you think about, 100 musicians on stage, or 80 to 100 musicians, and the kind of sonic quality of that, and then you think about, kind of musicians who are exploring any number of facets of their own artistry, it makes sense that they might want to find those points of connection, or find ways in which, their music can be enhanced by the sound world that a symphony orchestra can provide. So it's been a really exciting few years. I'd say this is, probably within the last decade that orchestras, and certainly the Oregon Symphony, has been a pioneer in this, of kind of matching those qualities of a symphony orchestra with artists that perhaps you wouldn't immediately think of as symphonic artists. But when those collaborations come together, it can be really, really special, and it can be very impactful for even those artists that are doing it. And what's really gratifying for me is when I've spoken to artists like last year, Cypress Hill, coming to perform with the Oregon Symphony, I talked to the artists afterwards, and they're so energized by the energy on stage, by the talent on stage, and the response of the audience. And it's a really amazing experience, I think, for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, really, really incredible seeing those. It's two different types of languages of music, but all kind of working together and working, in concert, I guess, to perform something like that. Really amazing. So having Killer Mike there this year, that's great. And as you mentioned, the lineup does seem to have a little bit of something for everybody if you go through it all. For those out there, maybe there's somebody out there who, talking to the people who may not go to the symphony very often, or maybe they haven't ever been. What would you say to those people out there who have never been to the symphony about what they can expect walking in for that experience, particularly for the Oregon Symphony, and what they can walk away with afterward?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming to a concert, what you can expect is a joyful gathering of a really diverse cross-section of our community coming together to experience beauty and hope and joy. I think everyone that I've spoken to, whether, if they're a first-time concert goer, they're just blown away by the quality of the orchestra. I think one of the unique things about Portland is that we have a tier 1 American orchestra. We're kind of viewed in that highest echelon of groups when it comes to symphonic music. And it is a remarkable group of musicians, and they play so well. The concerts are so impactful, and I think the experience of coming to a concert is so important, because again, it brings people together, it brings community together, it brings people downtown. Oftentimes there's that social aspect of it where you go out afterwards, or you go out before, you meet people through that experience. So the artistic impact is great, but the whole experience of coming to a concert, we want it to be as open, friendly, welcoming as possible, and for people just to have an awesome time.
Well, I think thank you very much, for joining us here to talk about this too and walk through this upcoming season. I'm sure we'll be visiting with somebody from the Oregon Symphony, throughout this season too, about some of these individual concerts as well. But great to get an overall look at it, see what's coming up, and what's the best place for people to go to for those watching that want to find out more or start picking up tickets to some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to our website, www.orsymphony.org, and you can find all of the upcoming concerts. You can buy tickets. You can ask questions. You can also give us a call, our box office a call. We've got great people who are excited to talk with you about all the programmatic offerings. So many different ways to connect.
Lots of ways. Well, thank you so much for connecting with us here for Fox 12 Now today. I really appreciate your time and talk about this. Congratulations on what looks like an amazing lineup, and looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate it.
You bet. And for everybody who's watching too, we are live streaming here. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back here at 1:30 p.m. So if you're watching live, it's 1:16 p.m. exactly as I'm looking right now. But we were talking about some businesses downtown. We are going to kind of continue that train a little bit, talking about small businesses with Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. Yes, if you've watched Shark Tank, you have seen Barbara. She's going to be joining us to talk about some special small business symposiums she's got, but also talking specifically about Portland and some advice for everybody who is working in a small business or plans to. So that's, again, coming up at 1:30 p.m. So I'll be right back here on whatever platform you're on. You can join me right there, and I will talk to you then. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.